Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and as you know, I've been making response videos and mostly react videos to oversimplified content. Up to this point, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah, I think I made about 5. But then the other day I found this video made by the YouTuber Lavader. The title being Oversimplified and the Harms of Oversimplifying History. So the idea is oversimplified dangerous? Well, just right out of the box, just like that, I would say no. I don't think oversimplified is doing anything dangerous, to be honest. But let's see how he argues the point. Let's watch it.
History YouTube. It is truly a magical place. Hundreds of creators, all sharing the same passion and love for the field. Hundreds of thousands of videos of people explaining and telling new stories about events and characters. Pair that up with magnificent and detailed editing styles and even some art to go alongside it, and you will have people hooked and interested for many hours to come, regardless of how boring or niche topic you are talking about is. I am very sure that plenty of you recognize some of the big players on the platform. Simple History with their elegant animations and iconic voice. History Matters with his cute art style and method of explaining certain topics.
I actually have never watched History Matters. Is this something you'd be interested in me responding to, noble ones? Let me know in the comments.
And questions in a very quick and elegant way, the armchair historian and his absolutely stunning animations and way of presentation. And who could forget Kings and Generals? The way he focuses on certain battles and wars in absolute stunning detail down to the smallest unit.
Yeah, I reviewed one video by him and it was the one about the Celtics. I thought it was pretty well made.
Overall, all of these creators bring something unique and exciting to the table, and thanks to them, many people got more interested in this field as well. But there is one man and creator all of us know about, the man who is the absolute undisputed king of history YouTube, completely crushing his competition in every way possible. I am of course talking about the one and only Oversimplified.
Is Oversimplified, well, first of all, is it one man? I don't think it's a one-man production, but I might be wrong. Do they have a team or do they do their own? Well, you probably know, so let me know in the comments. Regardless, is he the king of history YouTube? I always thought the cartoonish side of history YouTube to be its own subset. I'll be honest with you. And I'll probably use this as a comeback as he starts presenting his arguments, unless his arguments are solid and grounded.
This man is an icon for a very good reason.
Right.
He pretty much checks all the boxes. A beautiful and fun art style?
Yep.
Check. Iconic voice? Check. Extremely entertaining way of presentation? Check. Iconic jokes and sense of humor?
He's pretty good.
Check. Check and check. He and his content are perfect in almost every way when it comes to presenting and explaining history to people, no matter whether young or older. I have been a fan of his since pretty much primary school when he released his World War I videos. In fact, and here is some fun Lavader trivia for you, in 9th grade history class I was tasked with making a PowerPoint presentation about the big three of the Axis powers, Hitler, Mussolini, and Hirohito. And on the day of the presentation, when I got to Hitler, I instead played Oversimplified's Hitler documentary to the class with automatic subtitles on. Well, everyone was far too busy with studying for the physics exam later that day, so for the entire presentation I was pretty much talking to a brick wall. But you get the point. Oversimplified has been very influential on the field of internet history. Since his first videos he has...
I mean, look at those views. 51 million views, 33 million, 48 million. Holy moly!
Only been improving in every field, and he will continue to do so. He has also sparked numerous channels inspired by his style, and even an entire Turkish channel. As I started making my own content on here and breaking my young zoomer mind free from early 2010s internet brain rot by actually touching a book, I started noticing a few things about Oversimplified and his content. And the more pages I read and the more research I did, the more I started realizing his videos are not that good.
Okay, well, so finally he's going into the actual argument that he's presenting against Oversimplified. So his videos are not good. Based on what?
So here I am today, the little guy with 30,000 subscribers going up against an absolute titan.
That doesn't matter.
Honestly, now that I think about it, I am actually kinda surprised no one really did a response against him. Except for the Marxoids, but to be fair, they bark at any moving thing that hasn't gone 10 seconds without deep-throating Stalin. So let's get into it and see how Oversimplified's content is not only mid at best, but potentially even dangerous and misleading.
Dangerous and misleading. So now we know what, yeah, he just like the title. Let's see what he bases this on. Why is it dangerous?
Ironically, the problem at hand with Oversimplified is in the name itself. Oversimplified. It gives you...
No, but it's in the name. The way you're starting this, you're making it extremely difficult to justify your quarrel with the channel. Because if the problem was that Oversimplified oversimplifies too much, but the name of the channel is overcomplicate or extremely in-depth, then I would understand it. You could present and say, well, they say that they're going to do something, but then they're not. But they do say, it's like right on the title. So oversimplification cannot be used against oversimplified just as a matter of deductive logic. At this point, the only thing you could present is if they say something wrong. So the simplification is not the problem.
Already from the get-go what you need to know about his channel and his content. He oversimplifies history, giving a very basic story time-like telling of historical events and characters, with the art style we all know and love. Now, presenting history in this entertaining and fun way is not the problem. If anything, today we definitely could use more of it. But
yeah, I was going to say, you shouldn't say it's not the problem. It's a fantastic way to get people interested into history, so it acts as a gateway. So it's not that it's not the problem, it's actually really good that 50 million people watched a little cartoon about the Romans, and then maybe they think, you know what, Roman history is actually interesting. I thought it was going to be boring. Let me go and study it. I think that's very good, to be honest. So it's not that it's not a problem, it's actually beneficial.
Is the specific way these oversimplified events and characters are presented that really bothers me. When it comes to simplifying a certain topic, as with really anything else, there is both a good and bad way of executing that. Standard simplification and oversimplification. We will focus on standard simplification first.
But standard simplification is not what he advertises. It's not simplified history, it's oversimplified history. I still kind of remain strong on that argument.
Let's imagine you pick up a dense philosophy book like Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Now, I'll give you a quote from Kant and let's see if it's easy to understand.
Nothing is easy to understand from philosophy, mate, particularly Immanuel Kant. I'm not trying to be a contrarian, but the philosophy, no, you should have used a historical. You can't use it. You could put mathematics, and then, of course, if it's high-level mathematics, or if you put Mandarin Chinese, I mean, it's going to be really difficult in itself. You should take history and then give an example with history. You're shifting the goalpost, you're shifting the post here. In other words, my critique here is that an analogy needs to fit. Like, look at this.
This is humiliating for...
So he's going to read the whole thing. I'm going to skip it. If you want, you can pause it and read it. But yes, we get it. It's a very complicated passage from Immanuel Kant, obviously.
Glance.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Probably not much for the average reader, and...
Of course, yes, it's an advanced philosophical passage. But if you took an advanced historical passage that actually speaks about the, say, deep context of the Second Punic War, I think most people would still understand the words. With philosophy, oftentimes you read it, and at the end of the passage, you're like, do what? And you have to read it again. I imagine now he's going to offer his own version of simplification. Let's see.
That's completely normal. So let's try to simplify it. It's frustrating that...
Alright, so if you want, you can check it, but I think it's not a fit example. So whatever conclusion you draw is flawed in the first place because you're using philosophy. And even if you had used history, right, which you should have, and then you provided a good simplification, what you would be showing is not that oversimplified is dangerous, you would be showing that you can do a better job at simplifying than them, even if you were successful. Although then again, that would be a matter of opinion, of course.
the essence of what Kant is saying is still there.
Right.
This is the difference between simplification that helps understanding and oversimplification.
I think we have to have a look, as a linguist, we need to have a look at what oversimplification means, because if we are not clear on the meaning of words, then what you could do, I'm not saying that you're doing it willingly, I'm not attacking you, Lavader, but what you could do is that you could take your own personal interpretation or meaning of the word oversimplified and then use it as the standard. Now, it is true that oversimplify has a sort of negative aura to it, so I don't disagree that perhaps it would have been maybe better to say simplified history rather than oversimplified history as a matter of marketing and PR, but then again, the guy gets 50 million views per video, so can I really complain about it? But yes, person Lavader does have a point, because when we do see oversimplify and the definition, it says that it means someone is describing or explaining something so simply that what they say is no longer true, or make too simple. In other words, is simplified to a point of error, distortion, or misinterpretation. Now, I do not misrepresentation. I don't think that's how they mean it. I honestly think they mean oversimplified as we simplified very much, but you do have a point. So this is a good counterback. As I say, I'm not here to be a contrarian. To oversimplified usually does have a negative aura, like he's saying.
In education, good simplification focuses on why something works or what led to a conclusion. It takes people through the reasoning without losing the details. It's not about dumbing things down or skipping to the end, but about leading people step by step. In history, it's pretty common for people to call certain figures geniuses or dumb for something they did. While you could argue that the action may not have been very bright, it oversimplifies complex motives, decisions, and events. Right. Was there something that happened that made them take that action? Was it really because they were messed up or wise in the head, or were there certain factors into play that they could not control? Let's imagine a general during an important battle who orders his troops to charge straight into enemy lines, even though it looks like a complete suicide mission. To most observers, it might seem like a reckless and dumb decision. In fact, future historians might label this general as incompetent, claiming that he had led his men to certain defeat without any strategic thought. But let's think for a moment. Why did he make that choice? There could be evidence to suggest that the general had received faulty intelligence earlier that day, convincing him that the enemy forces were much weaker than they actually were. On top of that, perhaps a crucial supply line had been cut off, leaving his troops short on resources. With no ability to sustain a prolonged battle, he thought that a decisive strike might be the only chance to turn the tide before his army starved or surrendered. Now, does this make his decision any smarter? Not necessarily.
Exactly.
But it shows that it wasn't a simple case of poor judgment or idiocy.
Okay, well, let's have a look at this, because it's strange that you use this to argue your point against oversimplified at this instance, because let's say that oversimplified describes this battle and says, oh, this general made the wrong decision and they pushed all the men forward and the men died and he lost. That's an oversimplification. We could say a simplification, but whatever, that's an oversimplification. Then you come in and say, well, no, if we don't simplify it, and I give you the entirety of the context, we can see all of the factors that led to this general to make the wrong decision. It was still the wrong decision. So what oversimplified in that case, the channel is doing, is not telling you something false, it's just that they are simplifying it, like they say on the title, which is why we were to expect it. So if I do then want to know all the details, I can go and research it, or maybe find a full-on proper documentary. I would have a problem with oversimplified at that point if they said, no, this general won the battle. He sent all of the men forward and it was a great tactical choice and they won the battle. Then yes, you would have a point. But then your problem, and my problem, wouldn't be with the simplification of history. That is fine, because it's still presenting a correct information, it's just simple. The problem would be with the fact that they are getting it wrong, or that they are pushing something incorrect. You see, these are two different arguments. Do you have a problem because they teach something incorrect? Then we can talk about that. Or do you have a problem because they simplify? And you began and grounded your video with the fact that the problem is the oversimplification. At that point, I'll say the example you just shared, it's not a problem to simplify it. So what you want is for them not to simplify, but that's their channel. They simplify. At that point, I'm going to say, make another channel, mate, call it overcomplicated, and do the very opposite. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but then again, then yes, that's what you do with something like that. If you have a problem with simplification, then don't watch a channel that simplifies. It's as simple as that.
Multiple factors, bad intelligence, resource shortages, and so forth, shaped his choice, even if the outcome was disastrous. So,
of course, and you have to choose though. If you simplify, you have to remove information. Otherwise, you're not simplifying.
When we call him a dumb, incompetent general, we miss out on all the other elements that played into this decision. A meaningful simplification would explore why each side took the actions they did, how historical context shaped their decisions, and what the consequences were. To put it bluntly,
but then it doesn't become, if you explain all of the reasons and the whys and the hows and the don'ts, then it's not a simplification at that point.
Truly effective explanation makes sure people grasp the reasoning behind the facts, not just the conclusion. It respects the complexity of the subject while making it accessible to everyone. And then we have the other side, oversimplification. This one, which is unfortunately still pretty prevalent, simplifies things for the sake of simplifying. It throws all nuance out the window in favor of a standard black and white good versus evil, dumb versus smart approach. Its main focus is on the conclusion rather than the why of the topic or the event. And when the
up to this point is not sounding very strong. So, but good, you do show some sections, that's good. I wish it was with the Romans so that I could give my own position as to whether or not I think you're right or wrong, but...
And this could lead to misinterpretations or outright lies which will shape people's opinion of that field.
Alright, so when it comes to this, there is something I want to say. We are starting to build a bit more of a concrete counter-argument. So we understood what it is. He has a problem with simplification and the way they simplify it. And then I believe with them coming up with wrong conclusions as well. He has two separate issues. But now we have a third one. He says it could misinterpret, people could misinterpret, it could teach people wrong history. And then they go home having learned incorrect information. Who uses oversimplified to study history proper? There is a tier list, and I actually wrote it, so kind of to have a little visual representation of what I'm talking about. When it comes to the people and the types of media that can be used to misinform people and teach them wrong things, there are, I think, several tiers. For instance, number one, the most dangerous would be high academics and professors, which is why I focus a lot of my content to debunk them when they are using their titles and authority, which people normally look up to, and they're like, well, there, if a PhD says it, then of course that would be the most dangerous position and the one that we should consider the most dangerous and the one that we should attack and debunk because of their position of authority. Then I imagine local school teachers can be a problem too, although not up to the same extent, but we do trust them with our kids and we do trust them with teenagers. And so a lot of the things that children at school and students learn from their teachers, then when they need to get debunked, it's a little difficult. So that's something we should always look at. And I don't know if this should be number two or if this should be number two, you tell me, but definitely documentaries are another things that have a certain degree of authority, which is why I complained so much about the dangers and the problems and how problematic Netflix's Cleopatra was because they put the label documentary on stuff that was absolutely incorrect historically. After that, we have historical movies. Why are historical movies less dangerous than a documentary? Because they have less authority behind it. Just the same way as a documentary usually has less authority than actual high academics in their environment, meaning academia. Although then again, documentaries would go up a notch if it's one of those documentaries that has a lot of talking heads of actual professors, and then they start speaking and telling you this is how it is and I am an expert. That's not always the the case. If you remember, documentary had the grandma saying that her grandma said that Cleopatra was black. So at that point, I don't think people take that as a point of authority, but there are documentaries that do that. Anyways, historical movies, we know it's a movie, but then again, a little dangerous it can be, and that's why we sometimes debunk them. Then you've got video games, like for instance, Ubisoft, that is using a video game, but it tells you with the talking heads again, oh, this is a great way to learn about Japan, and then they put a lot of ahistorical stuff. Clearly, video games are less dangerous than movies and documentaries and teachers and professors because people don't give that level of authority to video games. They will say, oh, it's just a video game. Obviously, it's fiction. But then again, you know, if you play as a historical character or you play in ancient Rome, but the things that they show, you see white columns everywhere and white statues everywhere. There is not even a little bit of color. Or medieval England or medieval Italy is represented at a place with mud and everyone is dirty. Well, these things, even though it's a video game, they might connect to the mind of the people watching, and they could learn or think, well, yeah, medieval people, medieval people were all dressed in black and everything was dirty. They might still think that that's true, but of course, once again, the danger is low because it has a low chance. Cartoons are the lowest rung. They are the lowest rung, and the only position in which, the only case in which I would consider cartoons to be dangerous, and then they go up to level 2, is if cartoons are used by teachers in a school to teach very young children wrong information, usually for politically motivated ideals. That's the only case, because then a cartoon has a strong effect on a child. But when it comes to like YouTube cartoons, like oversimplified, I think the danger level is the lowest in the rung, because who's gonna take them seriously? It's a cartoon. It's entertainment, and that's what it is. But it could have the benefit, which I think outweighs any mistake they may have made, that it could act as a gateway. This is how I argue that if you think oversimplified is dangerous, man, what are you going to think about tier 1? That's where the real danger is.
Oversimplified is very guilty of this, and I am pretty sure a lot of you probably could count a few examples you notice from the top of your head. I most noticed these things in a series about the Russian and French Revolution. So I picked one example from his Russian Revolution video and one from the French Revolution, to just make you realize what is at play here. I could go over more, and trust me, there are plenty, but then this video would be hours long, and
You know what that's called? A simplification. You just simplified. You just said there are so many things that I could do and so many things that I could show you and talk about the history, the details, the nuance, all the whys. But I can't because I don't want to make an hour-long video. You want to make a 31 minutes video. So you had to cut out effectively 30 minutes worth of content that would have given us a much deeper nuance and a much deeper understanding using and applying your own logic. So how do you do that? You pick and choose, specifically removing information that wouldn't have been important to make a simplified version. That's what they do. Now, we could say that perhaps they simplify too much. Okay, I still don't think it's dangerous though.
I have a few more things to talk about. In 1917...
Okay, so now he goes into a massive, super long section where he explains all of the details, and I'll be honest with you, I just watched it, and if you want to watch it, I'll put a link in the description, but it was a bit boring to watch, also because it's a topic I'm not particularly versed in, so I can't even double check if what he's saying is correct or not. But anyways, that's the point he's trying to make. He's showing you how it's done, all right? In the deep version, though, this is like he goes into all the details, which once again, if the problem is oversimplified is simplifying, yeah, that's in the title. Now let's see.
Oversimplified portrayed the Kornilov affair.
Hey man, thanks for the promotion. That was real swell of you. Of course, with you by my side, who would dare try to overthrow me? How about me? I did not see this coming. Unfortunately for Kerensky, Kornilov hated the liberal and socialist reforms of the new government, particularly the dumb socialist soldiers' committees. The army was no place for undisciplined left-wing snowflakes. Fearing a Bolshevik takeover was imminent, Kornilov ordered his men towards Petrograd to oust the Soviet and take over.
Yeah. Are you starting to understand what I am getting at here?
So yeah, this simplified version of what you said here. Unfortunately, I can't check the correctness of it.
Actually, I will let oversimplified take it off with the French Revolution part.
Respect for the monarchy was at an all-time low, as France's finances were spiraling out of control, and the king and his aides really only had one solution to the crisis. Tax the poor. Tax the poor. We could do a sexy calendar shoot.
They're great.
Tax the poor. And so it was. The poor, who were already struggling to make ends meet, found themselves being taxed from every direction. And that's not all. A huge portion of the peasants' harvest had to be given up. And there was also the labor tax, where peasants were required to work a certain number of days for their local lord without pay.
So, first of all, no. Louis XVI did not tax the peasants harder. In fact, one of his first measures to combat the financial crisis France was facing, together with the Controller General of Finances, Charles Alexander de Calonne, was major tax reforms, which...
Okay, so now he's gonna go into the full explanation, and the reason that he has a lot of paragraphs to read and all of that, we'll grant him this because it's not a topic that I have reviewed recently, so I don't know if what he's saying is actually more correct than what Oversimplified said, but what's the point is this. Let's take it at face value and let's say that Lavader is correct. Oversimplified, in that case, was wrong. What that means is that you don't have a problem with the simplification then, because you yourself simplified. You have a problem that they sometimes get things wrong. Everybody does though. So there is that. I'm sure you do too. In fact, I actually found a video where you did get something wrong, and I'll show it very briefly in a second, just to show that if your problem is that they get something wrong, then you should ditch the problem is the oversimplification. Just say, I did find some mistakes in the Roman section, and I corrected them, but I still don't think it was dangerous. One, because it's a cartoon. Two, because everybody gets something wrong. It doesn't matter. Even highest level of academia gets stuff wrong. So we can't just point the finger and say, well, oversimplified bad because they get something wrong, everybody does. And I think the real problem here is that you are trying to frame it as the problem is oversimplification, and I do not believe that the problem is oversimplification. Neither do I believe that there is an inherent danger with the likes of Oversimplified channel.
Despite him being oversimplified in every sense of the word, we do see that he does actually put quite a bit of effort into research, since he talks about many things similar to a Wikipedia page. But would it really be that difficult to read a proper book on the topic written by a historian?
But you built a straw man. So you built a premise that you don't know if it's true, and then you use that, which is the idea of, oh, he only uses Wikipedia and doesn't do proper research. And then you say, would it be really difficult to do that? But you don't know if that's the case. I do know that they only post once or twice a year, so he definitely takes his time. If it were me, and it's not the case already, I would advise him, considering that he probably makes an enormous amount of money. I would tell him, hey, just get a team. Get a team. Like I have a team. If I can afford a team, he can afford 10 times the team I have. Get a team of really, really good historians and professionals and let them do the research, and then you write the script and do the rest, animations and the video. That's what I would suggest at that point. But the idea of, would it be really difficult to pick up a book written by a historian, but that's not how you do. If you really want to use that, okay, let's assume, I'll grant you that again, for the sake of argument, that he does just use a little Wikipedia here and there. Again, articles online, nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with using online resources. So that already is a non-argument. You don't have to use a physical book. You can use online resources. There are a lot of excellent online resources and libraries out there. But let's say that he's not using those and he's just using Wikipedia. Then, and Wikipedia is too cursory, and I myself am not a huge fan of. It's okay for some introductory things, but it's not great. But what you're suggesting is not the way to do proper research. The way to do proper research is not to select a book by a historian, read it and repeat what they said. No, the proper way to do it is to read a few books from different historians, but most importantly is to dig into the primary sources, which is what we do here as a team. If you rely on what the historian said, he might be wrong, and then you're repeating information said by someone who is wrong, which is why it takes a long time to prepare deeply researched videos. You have to dig into the primary sources. That's the actual advice you give, not to...
Since he talks about many things similar to a Wikipedia page. But would it really be that difficult to read a proper book on the topic written by a historian so you can get all the context and nuance of the topic you are talking about? I mean, McMeekin's book, one of the best in regards to the Russian Revolution, appears as one of the first if you Google Russian Revolution book. The Kornilov affair would have been excellent material for his style and way of presentation, and I do believe he would have absolutely loved it if he came across the full context of what happened and included it in his video. And he would have if he just, again, picked up a book. So...
You don't know if he didn't. So you can't really use that. Again, you're building a castle of cards based on an assumption that you don't know if it's true.
Than taken seriously. Let me ask you this. When we click on an oversimplified video, what is the primary reason and incentive for watching his content? Is it learning about history? No. Sure, that may be a factor, but if that was the primary one, you would be picking up books about the Punic Wars from your local bookshop. No. The primary reason any of us watch his videos is entertainment.
Absolutely. This kind of defeats your entire video, though, this statement.
The animation, jokes, and his overall way of presentation is what we are truly here for. Everything else, including the information, comes second. I mean, Oversimplified could literally make a video about photosynthesis and it could still rack up tens of millions of views.
I would watch that.
So, what is the issue here? You see, when a video focuses more on the entertainment aspect, it tends to put viewers into a state of ease and relaxation, a mental state that makes it much easier for them to accept information without questioning it. Psychologically, this effect is known as the elaboration likelihood model, which suggests that when people are relaxed or entertained, they are more likely to process information through the peripheral route rather than the central route. The peripheral route relies on superficial cues such as humorous animation or charismatic presentation, rather than a critical evaluation of the content itself. Essentially, if something is entertaining or enjoyable, people often accept the accompanying message without much scrutiny, because their defenses are down. This is particularly effective because humans are emotional beings by nature. Our brains have evolved to prioritize emotion over...
Yeah, this is... He's going into a little bit of a deeper root, I imagine in this case. The thing I would say is that, in fact, it is good that something is entertaining, because otherwise, if it's absolutely boring, people are not going to use their critical skills and cognitive abilities to really figure out. They're just not going to watch it. So when something, that's why, like in university, sometimes some lectures can be terribly boring, but students push through because they need the piece of paper. But when it's entertainment on YouTube, when it's your own choice, then people click away because they don't have to stay there. So you have to entertain them somehow. Otherwise they'll leave and then they will learn nothing, which is why I would rather that they watch something that is really entertaining, even if it's very simplified, because at least they watch it and then it may spark an interest as a gateway, as I was saying, towards history. And the idea that their defenses are down, okay, but that could be used against the massive professors that teach lies with authority. It's a cartoon. Even with defenses down, who's gonna use the information learned on Oversimplified to write a PhD thesis? Who's gonna use it even to pass a high school test? They're not going to do it. I think most people are not going to do it. And if there is someone who watches Oversimplified and they think this is real history, everything I see must be correct because this cartoon is the same as a PhD, I mean, they're idiots at that point. I don't know what to say.
Rationality. Emotional appeals activate the limbic system, the part of the brain involved in our emotional and behavioral responses. When a video, like those by Oversimplified, delivers information with humor, vibrant colors, and engaging storytelling, it directly taps into our emotions, making us more receptive. This emotional engagement creates a feeling of trust and familiarity, often completely bypassing our rational skepticism. In contrast, rational analysis...
You have to put it into connection with the fact that it's a cartoon, though, because that's going to remind our rational skepticism. Like the two things, I believe, balance out each other. So what you're saying may be true. There are studies, I don't know, it may be true. But then you also have to put it within the full context. I am seeing a little white ball with a silly helmet on top, and then in the background there is a soldier that is spanking like a Carthaginian soldier that is spanking a mercenary rebel. Do you think I think that's actually what happened? No, because there is also a suspension of disbelief. So there are a lot of factors that need to be played into this. I don't think people are complete morons. So just like I can separate the little soldier spanking or whatever, at one point if I see that one of the Carthaginians are wearing or the Romans are wearing sunglasses, I'm not going to believe it because my things are down, so my critical mind and cognitive functions are now diminished by 55.3%, and therefore I might think that there are actually sunglasses within the Roman Empire or the late Republic, I should say. No, so the real point is then up to what extent do these things balance out, and I think they balance out relatively evenly. Okay, anyways, I would suggest to check out the video. I'm gonna suspend the reaction to this point, but yeah, I disagree with what I've seen up to this point. I might continue watching it a little bit on my own, but I don't watch the entirety of these videos because I do want to encourage people to go and click the link in the description and the pinned comment. But up to this point, no, I really don't think oversimplified is dangerous. There are a lot far more dangerous things out there than oversimplified. Can they improve how correct the information they share? Yes, there is room for improvement. I'm absolutely willing to say that, and I would be more than happy to help them out when it comes to the Roman aspect of things. For example, to get the armor and weapons correct, as they did get their weapons wrong and swapped with the Second Punic War, as I've described in my dedicated video. So I would be more than happy to do that, but it doesn't have to be me. There are plenty of people who are more capable than me that they could hire, and they definitely have the money for it. So that would be the only actual criticism that I would throw at oversimplified. Simplify all you want. I don't have a problem with that. You were clear in the title. Plus, you're a little silly looking cartoon. However, maybe if we want to, since there were some mistakes, just like there were mistakes in my content, just like there are mistakes definitely in Lavader content, and in any content, and in lectures at university, mistakes will happen. But it would be, once we identify those mistakes, then it would be good, I think, for oversimplified, since they definitely have the budget to maybe improve a little bit the correctness and the quality of their research. That's as far as I'll go. But is oversimplified dangerous? No.